Hey guys, so this episode is complicated, very complicated to talk about because there's stuff I really like about this episode and there's stuff that does kind of tick me off a little bit. um, so right out of the gate, this episode kind of took me off guard in the sense of how it ended because when this arc started in the anime, I had assumed for whatever problems it was going to have that the final episode of the season was going to end how this episode ended. And I suppose in retrospect, considering how the pacing has been all over the place with this season, I shouldn't have been too surprised now. But now that just kind of leaves the bigger question open of at what point in the manga this season is going to end. Because they've already kind of used the best possible ending point I could think of in this episode. And obviously, the next episode is going to adapt a little bit more of the Paranormal Liberation War arc. So, knowing that there's only one or two other routes I can think of for this season to end, but because they've only ever taken bits and pieces from that part of the story, it's going to be, well, to put it lightly, a little messy. But I guess that figures, seeing how it's been the mantra season 5 from the beginning. And I'll dive more in depth with my thoughts on this in the final episode. But the when you get down to it, the real sad part about this season for me is even now, I believe it didn't need to be this way if they just either nixed the damn movie or reworked the plot as an anime, or reworked the plot of that movie as an anime-only story, because again, just a little bit of a teaser for my final thoughts on this season in the next week's episode. But yeah, every problem I try and like separate from the movie, it always ends up circling back to that. Um, but okay, but with that said, obviously the battle between Shigaraki and Re-Destro comes to an end in this episode. But the interesting thing about it is the flashback of Shigaraki's life after killing his parents and his family, and it really shows that in the present time, when you see him fully awaken his memories and power, that this is the point that All For One has been grooming Shigaraki for. Even even when he gave Shigaraki the hands of his family and using them as a means to buffer his power and for him to control them, in the end, it was still what we see here in this battle is still the outcome that All For One was working towards. The moment where Shigaraki's memories would burst to the surface and his power would boil over, which shows just how much All For One knew about Shigaraki's power, specifically how interlocked his emotions were with them. And he did it. And the thing is, he trained Shigaraki under the guise of trying to suppress them, but suppressing his power ultimately only served to make them stronger, leading to here against the final moments in the fight against Re-Destro. Although I'm sure All For One's plan. Although I think in some ways, the whole thing with Re-Destro in itself might have been a slight miscalculation, because I'm sure All For One's plan was more that he probably hoped it would happen against All Might, but that still goes a long way to explaining why he stepped in to fight All Might at that time during the villain raid arc. Like, Shigaraki literally was not ready in his mind. He needed to be ready for that. He needed to wait until he needed to postpone everything else to make sure Shigaraki's ready. Of course, we also learned that All For One's last name is in fact Shigaraki, which just the fact that he gave Tenko his name at that time not only reinforces that point at all, but how he wasn't even being subtle about his manipulation, but because no one other than All For One was in this society was there for Shigaraki and helped him, or just basically extended a helping hand. Ultimately, Shigaraki perceived All For One's All For One helping him as some twisted form of kindness. Like, it was the only kindness he knew. Now, with that said, there is a little bit of an elephant in the room to address with this fight between Shigaraki and Re-Destro, which is how the fight ends. And again, this is the part I'm really kind of mixed by how they treated the ending to this arc, because in the manga, when Shigaraki defeated Re-Destro, it felt like a rebirth for his character, like he had fully become the symbol of fear and evil that All For One was raising him to be. And Horikoshi added in one, and to reinforce that point, in the manga, Horikoshi added in honestly one of the most beautiful backdrops of basically everyone gathered around the two of them in the rubble of the city. But here, and it's one of those things where it felt like the most weirdly, like the most twistedly beautiful kind of way in order to end that arc. But here, it just felt like the battle ended and faded to black, which, granted, that's kind of what had happened in the manga too. But I guess to describe it, if I had to describe it, there was just no artistic atmosphere to basically the ending of that battle. That's the big thing I need to get across. And honestly, I think it's probably the biggest problem that this arc had, that this season has had in general, is that it feels like unlike previous arcs, it feels like there's no artistic atmosphere to anything that's going on right now, and that is a shame, because there is a reason this is regarded as one of the best arcs in the series, honestly, because of just how artistic and emotional it can be. But again, the anime flubbed it up big time. The only high point I can offer is that, much like last week, the art and animation with the fight itself was still amazingly on point, but everything surrounding it just wasn't. And while not as detailed in the manga, the two little things I do appreciate about this fight is at least they made an attempt. Is that, again, while not as detailed in the manga, at least they made an attempt to recapture the look of Shigaraki's cape becoming black wings during the fight, and the fact that they didn't entirely censor the whole thing with Re-Destro. Don't get me wrong, they still kind of censored it, but at least they didn't didn't have it where he still had his legs. Like, Re-Destro lost his legs in this episode, and I at least appreciate the fact that they kept that much in. On the other hand, though, I think where Bones definitely succeeded in this episode is playing up the idea that things have gone from bad to worse for her, for this society, and that now that the League has partnered with the Liberation Army and become the Paranormal Liberation Front now, it's showing that they've become a full-blown organization that needs to be feared and reckoned with at this point. And it's showing that, yeah, from here, hero society is just done. There is, like, with this many villains, these many villains gathered together, it's like hero society is not going to survive much longer. Like, everything only gets bad from worse from here. And but yeah, guys, like, I don't know what else to say. Like, I feel like this season overall is just going to end with a bit of a puff, honestly. It's kind of like it'll just be kind of a thing that happened before we move on to season 6. And honestly, I do have my concerns about season 6, but as long as a movie isn't part of that plan in season 6, I'm a little more confident, at least, about season 6 in that regard, as long as a movie isn't part of that plan. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, and subscribe. I'm on Twitter, Analyst, Crunchyroll. Be sure to hit the notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, everyone.